So, I have done a thing. I have finished coding my first game. Now, while calling it a game might be a little bit generous at this point, the terminology I've heard used is MVP, Minimum Viable Product, but that's all I care about right now. I have coded by myself a functioning game. You know, it has buttons, it can fight, it can do the stuff, I can get drops. So, I wanted to have this video to give some context and just to share my journey, how me having basically no coding knowledge whatsoever, how I was able to figure out Godot and my attempts at a few other programs and what tools I used and how I got here, and ideally, how I want to get to that next step and make progress to make a even more fully finished game. So, where did we start? So the one thing I have is a couple of years ago, I was bored and I had dice. And I made a couple series of games I called Dice Venture. And it was a very, very simple game that you get, I think I could play with like 2d6s. If you had more, it could make it somewhat easier, but really have 2d6s and sit there and roll and follow this cards. I ended up getting decently good, I like to think. You know, you can let me know if these make any form of sense if you get to do it. But that you could theoretically play, print this all on one index card, front and back, and have a basic dice combat game. So in learning to code, I have so many ideas of making games. Over here is a couple just vague ideas I have, not necessarily outlined to any degree, of wanting to make games learning to code. And one of my ideas going into it was, you have all the tutorials on YouTube that are wonderful and very great that you can follow, but sometimes you don't learn too much from them because it's the application is where you really learn, or at least where I really learn. Let me follow some tutorials and try to co-opt what they have and apply it to my own thing. So, I've made these Dice Venture games, and this Dice Venture 1 is a fully finished early game, right? Not necessarily balanced. Like I said, I have improvements in Dice Venture 2 and 3 that kind of actually make it a viable game, but it's feature complete for as far as Dice Venture 1 goes. So, first stage is you create your character, you roll one dice, and depending on what you get, say we roll a 3, we're a human. And humans inherently get advantage if they're wizard, and disadvantage if they're knights. The next you roll 2 dice. Let's say we roll a 2 and a 4. Right? And then we have the choice of either being a archer or a knight. And because humans have disadvantage of knight, we want to be an archer, so at least we're neutral. And then we'll roll 3 dice. Let's say we get 1, 2, 3. And then because we're a human archer, we'll look at the archer tab, and we'll either take weapon 1, weapon 2, or weapon 3. So whether we want +1 power, -1 accuracy, neutral, or -1 power, +1 accuracy, right? And then with that, we'll choose our weapon, and we'll say we want the longbow for the plus power, minus accuracy. Like I said, the rules are mostly irrelevant. But then as you go, you'll roll a dice to fight your first enemy. You roll a 2. We are fighting an ogre. We both have starting health of 10. That resets every match, every round. You always start with 10. They always start with 10. We go first. We roll 1d6 to see if we hit. The ogre has a accuracy requirement of 2. And because we have a +1 power and -1 accuracy, we have to roll at least a 3 to hit the ogre. But if we roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6, we hit. And we roll that same d6 another time, or another d6. And whatever damage we do, we add +1, so we roll a 5, we do 6 damage. And then they just attack straight. They roll 1 dice, they roll a 4, deal 4 damage to us. We roll again, we get another 3 and a 6 or whatever, we kill it. We get to roll from the rewards tab. We roll a simple d6, we get one of these, either an item that can be used, or a ring that can be equipped to continue to boost our stats. And then we'll go back in. If we die, we lose our items. There's a funky kind of chance wheel that we can choose that is technically the only way to change your weapons or race or run away or get a one shot or whatever. Like I said, not a balanced game, but a feature complete game. So in coding, I could just figure out how to execute my code, how to apply it all, and not having my more ambitious ideas. A 3D world that I'm like, okay, I don't know exactly what I want to do at all, so I don't know how to ask how to do it because I don't know what I want to do. So I figured it would be easiest to start with a baseline and where to go and exactly how to code. All the questions are, how do I code this? At first, I started in Xcode with the idea of, it'd be interesting and fun to throw a, not necessarily release, or maybe eventually release, to throw this on my iPhone and kind of build it towards that direction. And Xcode is actually pretty cool with how they have stuff laid out of the centering and the tile building. I did this a couple of years, like a year or two ago, so I don't remember exactly how it worked, but I got the main layout decently good. It looks pretty terrible, but it's lined out coherently. And I was able to figure that out myself, following mainly Code with Chris. He has some great tutorials over with Swift coding. Does awesome stuff. I very much appreciate him, very much recommend him. And I was following his how to code War, the card game War, and trying to take most of the functions from that and apply it to this. And I probably didn't follow enough of his tutorial, but I ran into problems of trying to swap out images and, say, hey, I want my dragon or my bat or whatever I'm fighting to change. And it's a whole hullabaloo, which I did discover it is also the same thing in Godot, if you don't do it right, which, full disclosure, I did not do it right in Dice Venture in this, my first rendition, but that's the whole point of this, is to learn. So, did this, ran into some problems, but that's kind of where the main display part comes out. And then, after giving up on that, a few years later, I came back and tried Godot. And this is where I have a technically functioning build. I have buttons, I can fight, like I said, I can have my accuracy, I have my power, I have it, if I had this stuff, I could equip my rings. It is a functioning version, like I said, MVP, minimum viable product, because it functions. Which, as someone who has not had any coding experience before this, other than occasionally hopping on YouTube or hopping on whatever thing to learn to code for a week and then giving up the week after, I'm quite pleased. Like, this code is terrible, but I will talk you through at least my experience of having absolutely no idea what to do and trying to teach myself Godot. I want to tell you and walk you through how I did it and what tools I used. And because you see, I have a lot of tutorials that, they're wonderful. They're great and tell you what to do and how to do it. But also, they know what they know. But I know now what I didn't know. So I'd like to offer a slightly different perspective of someone who doesn't really know anything, knows I'm doing so many things wrong, but the fact that it's functional, I want to celebrate. And in part to make sure I know what I'm doing, I can review this, show you guys what I did, and please, by all means, tell me in the comments what I did horribly, horribly wrong. This is my first technical thing. I've not done any coding in any other situation, but it functions, and I want to keep going. I'm very intrigued with this, with Godot, and want to get better, and I'll even show you, I've started vaguely working on what I call Dice Venture 2, which adds a few more areas, a few more different items, a few more different mechanics, and other fun stuff like that. So, I want to get into it, show you what I've done, what I've learned, and how we got to this point. And a lot of what got me here was another tutorial on YouTube of how to program in Godot, GD script tutorial from Brackley's. It's just a simple 1 hour, here's the basics of how to code. A very wonderful, useful thing that got me. I had to Google one additional thing to try to figure out what to do. Like I said, so I wanted to make my basic simple card game, and he gave me enough of the tools in the toolbox to build what I needed to do. In addition to having a good tutorial to follow and a core mechanics of the game, the other thing I prepped was just basic item and images. I just ripped them off Google. Probably should credit the artists. My bad. But just needed something just to get just a placeholder art so I can test that my game functions. I was gonna hop into Photoshop, make them all the same size, 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels or whatever. This was all arbitrary, just pulling numbers out of nowhere, so don't take these numbers as good sizes. I made sure my damage dice and my dice were the same size of my player character and my enemies, so I could just lay them over at the same spot perfectly. Same thing, my numbers are the same size as my items, so I can layer them on top just fine. Coming to this with a really good tutorial, a basic concept of a game that I have fully planned out, and a couple of art assets. I dove in and want to show you what I got. So, I first copied over basically my same layout from when I tried the Swift, learned to code in Swift, and how they have it in Dice Venture, or how they have it in Godot, is pretty nice and pretty intuitive. So you have different nodes that you can kind of, everything's connected to. So you have your big main game, and I think you can have separate scenes and have all this other stuff. I haven't gotten to any of that yet. So right now I have all my coding script is on one, connected to the very top part of this all. And then I have a background. This is, this is all one image. These are not separate blocks. It's all just one image. I popped in Photoshop, picked the random size. Picked a random size of 450 pixels by 800 pixels, because that was the right aspect ratio, or close to the right aspect ratio for phones or whatever, and then took that around with it. And then so I was able to first just have that background layer, the second layer, and then within these, I was able to specify canvas layer of kind of what order these present. So -1 is below everything. And then on the next layer above that, I apparently chose layer 0, would be my player assets. Was able to line those up at whatever coordinates, drag them until they look good, do some rough, figure out these of, I want them, or whatever the math is, all on the 575 pixels down and over, 25 pixels in between, whatever, scale them down 25 or to 50%, whatever, get all that lined up nicely from just going in and bringing it in, transforming 0.5, moving it where I want, putting this exactly what, pretty chill. That part, the break cancel everything. Pretty straightforward, right? And then the next layer is basically all my text or stats or other effects. And that was the same thing, was able to go in here and add a label node that I can call whatever I want. This is a thing, blah, blah, blah. And then once again, this is all still just establishing out the basic layout, right? I've done no coding at this point. I have my background, have my enemy sprite, my player sprite, my images, having just all the different labels that I want to be able to talk to and equip, or, have whether I have rings equipped, have the numbers of how many items I have in my pocket, have my just, I have my just, this is just one gift, one image with 3 blocks. Now they'll just copy and paste over. So I have all that, and that was, so then my app was set up looking good. And then the fun bit was this last layer that just makes all buttons, where it gets all into the getting things to talk to each other. And that is where we get into my mess of a code. Some examples of how my code is the most chaotic thing in the world is even, I don't have consistency. I have the : =, which like will have inherently value. This one will like specify a string array, then some will just be inferred or whatever garbage. I said I'm not following any proper. I mean, the syntax is there because it works. I'm not following good practice with coding because I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't coded. This is my first thing coding. And then how it's laid out. I said I'm sure there's easier ways of breaking up, like adding the code of the buttons to the buttons or something, and then having signals talk back and forth. That's all this stuff I want to improve in my next iteration. Like I said, is Dice Venture 2, where I want to fix a lot of the problems. But the whole goal of this was to get it functional. And so at the very top, I have all here is just all my variables that my game is ever going to want to interact with. And I all have the onReady. I'm sure most of these don't need to have the onReady, but the onReady just means as soon as the game loads in, it preps these. They are created at the start of the game. And the only time, from what I understand, is that could be an issue is if the game tries to call for them before they're, like, it's an order of loading, where the game tries to load a scene before the variable is created. So I just, on the side of caution, just onReadied all of them, so I don't have to learn when not to have them onReady. And then I just have a whole bunch of variables that my game cares about. So I have a variable of health. I should call this player health, but I know now it's a player health. So my health is set at 10. And a lot of these, even what they're set at to start with, isn't too relevant. It's just a placeholder. I have my state 0. I'll get into what that is. I have my player race, which is a random number from 0 to 5. In my dice, it's a 1 to 6, but in coding, counting starts at 0 because some smart person decided it's better that way. So it sets my race, because I said if you think back to my game, you have one choice of the race. Your race is set when you start the game. So the race is hard set, and then I have an array, or a string of arrays, an array of strings. Strings are like actual text, and array is just multiple options. It is like, okay, here's my reference of race. And arrays also start at 0. So this is slot 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can call later and say, hey, what's my player race? Go look in my array, go look at race, and look at slot number player race. And the code will say, hey, it'll go here and check, okay, my player race, the random number was 2. And then it'll go, okay, we need to look at the race, slot 0, slot 1, slot 2, human. And then very similarly for the player type, start off to 0, because right now you aren't choosing yet. This will be set later, right? When you have the 2 options, then I can call in with it later. Hey, look at my player type. If this doesn't change, my player type is Archer because it's 0. But this will get updated according to your choices. Then one of the things that broke my brain, but that was incredibly useful, are dictionaries. And dictionaries inside dictionaries. And this is where Bracky came in clutch. He has introduced me to dictionaries to make this whole thing so much easier. Because I said, if we look at the card, depending on what your character is and your character's class and which of those weapons they have, it's like 3 layers deep. Okay, I rolled a 2. That's relevant to what's its power and accuracy. Is it for archer? So it's a short bow, or as a knight with a scimitar, or I need to know my wand's power and accuracy bonus. That's where dictionaries come in. And they work how you'd traditionally look at a dictionary. You have a word and you want its definition. So all this is a fancy way of storing information. So I can go in my dictionary and say, hey, I want to look up something in my player dictionary. I want to look under elf, and I want to look under, this isn't even weapons. I want to look under elf, I want to look under archer. So this is saying, all right, elves as archers get the advantage. Else is knight, get disadvantage. So this I want to know, okay, my human archer, does he get advantage or disadvantage or neutral from that? So I can feed this dictionary and say, hey, go look under human, go look under archer, and then it will spit back 0. So I can know no advantage, no disadvantage. And I don't need to split this up between power and accuracy because it's a +1 to power, or -1 or +1 to power and accuracy, or a -1 to power and accuracy, or a neutral. Where it gets more fun is my weapons dictionary. Then you have my type modifier. That is just my class bonus, so I can save that for easier reference. I don't got to pull in the whole dictionary later. And also, side note, I need to call it in this player type rather than class, because class apparently means a whole other frame of reference for coding. So if I try something, call something class, it wants to do something else entirely. So we're just calling it type instead of class for the sake of my coding venture. So then, you can set my modifiers, and this will set the options. And because really, for my weapons in my class, there are only 3 options instead of 6. It's just doubled. To make it simple, I really have it just roll a random number of 3, because it's all equal odds or whatever. So these are your first option, second option between your which 2 classes, and then these are your which weapon options, right? So we'll call those later. Then just to set a player weapon, just so I can mess with that variable later. And same thing in the dictionary. I can go in and, hey, I need to know what my weapon's accuracy bonus is. So I can say, hey, I'm an archer. I have a longbow. What's its accuracy? But the problem I ran into with that was there's no way to say, hey, I don't have an easy way to say, hey, I have a longbow in here. I can pull I'm an archer fairly easily, right? Because I have my whatever race, and that I have my race that was assigned, and go in and look at, type, where my type I chose, go in and look at, okay, I'm an archer. But I don't have an easy reference for that. So then I had the brilliant idea of making a second dictionary that's backwards, right? Because up here we have the options of, because you'll roll the dice. This time you'll roll 3 separate dice on 3 separate choices. So this will just display the choices. You'll have choice 0, choice 1, or choice 2. Then I can look in there because you have already chosen your class. And they can go in there, hey, you're an archer with option 0, 0, and 1. So you have an archer of a longbow, and short bow. And then I can set that, and I can keep that setting of my player's weapon is 0. I chose longbow. And then that makes it easier to go in and check if, okay, I need to know my archer with I know I'm an archer, and I need to know what my accuracy modifier is, but I don't know what my weapon is, so I can go over here and say, hey, I'm an archer with weapon 0. That's a longbow. So then I can go archer with a longbow, accuracy -1. So dictionaries have been my saving grace in this thing. They're kind of complicated, especially when you get 1, 2, 3 layers deep. The coding string for them is long. If you have any useful advice of how to make it look cleaner, let me know. But as I said, it's functioning, and I'm so happy it's functioning. And then this down here is basically the same thing for enemies, and whether or not I have my inventory of whether I have a poison or a potion, or if I have any rings equipped, all that, whatever. So like I said, all this is just every single switch in the game that have the option of flipping, right? So if anything can change, that's what variable is, anything that can adjust to change, a number, a name, a label, whatever. This is all of them right here. Which leads the rest of all this to how it's all changed. And then so, we start off with the function at ready when the game starts. This just simply sets everything to a neutral, right? So this just sets what this screen looks like. Makes my enemy character blank, enemy's damage blank, my enemy's name, HP, and all this blank, my player blank, my name is just my username, my class, my race, my weapon, my all this stuff, my inventory is 0. I don't have any way of saving in this game. That sounds way too complicated. I'll figure that out much later. So that's all this is so as I mess with stuff in here, this isn't relevant. I can have this whatever image, whatever display I want. In here, this is where it actually sets to, hey, turn off these images. And this is where I run into my first learning experience, right? So one of the main problems I have was trying to get images to load what image I want. So like in this case, my potion amount, I want it to have the number, item number 0. I wanted to have this 0 right here to say, hey, I have 0 potions. And so I found the workaround, probably the way, or I know it's the way you're not supposed to do it, is just hard resource load this exact image that loads in the files exactly this image. I have since learned the wonderful power of sprite sheets. That makes my life so much easier and avoids this, which I'll get into later. That is the worst way of doing it, but I made it work, and it works, and we're starting with that. So all of this comes, instead of everything, the basic with the label over button 2, the middle button for a start, question mark. And then, so these are the 3 buttons that we have, the red buttons, this one, and this one, right? That if you press, they tell it what to do. And the idea I had for this game is to have just a state, right? And like I said, so up here, set state to 0, and that kind of controls my character creation. So it can say, hey, if if the state is equal to 1 or 2 or 3, do something. 1, 2, 3, do something. Because these are set state 0, nothing happens until I first hit that first button. And now that it's state 1, it'll unlock the state 1, and which will unlock these 2 buttons, which I can choose my type or class. Like I said, I can do an archer, and then it'll go to state 3 or state 2, which will let me pick my weapons. Do a short bow, and now the game is on full play, which is state 3, the final state, which will give me my fight command, my chance command, and my run command. Right, and now all these are unlocked properly, and now the game is fully introduced, fully going. So, and then over here, these are the rest of the buttons: the potion, the poison, the bomb. What happens there? But even with these, nothing happens in until state. Poison. Cell state 3, nothing happens, right? So now we have what happens in each of the different states, right? So I have a function that when this is called, this will run. So when I press this button, it just runs state 0. So it looks for the function farther down in the code to run exactly this. And so that will just set state to 1. So it'll progress the game. It'll say, hey, it'll tell you what your race is, because I set up top. That is hard set. It will add a question mark so you don't know your class is. It will give you options. It'll say, hey, look at the type array, look at option 1, or whatever it rolled, 1, 2, or 3, add a space with a string of, and it'll give you this information. And this information will give you the context of what the benefit of having that type is. Right, so that pulls in the wizard is a 1, because at this point it says, okay, I'm a human. It has checked that I'm human, because I said it rolled, and like I said, it rolled what I told it was going to roll. That was funny. It rolled a 2, right? So it displayed that as human. And then it'll go say, hey, you're human, and then it will look in my player dictionary then it'll it'll look at my race and say, okay, my player race number is 2. And look at the race string and say, okay, that's human. And the player dictionary under human, the type under option whatever this is, and it rolled a wizard. We'll do all of that to pull out the number 1. Right? So it's going in here to say, all right, I need to know a couple different things. I need to know you're human. I need to know the option of option 1 rolled a 3. And that 3, or rolled a 2, sorry. That 2 will go in the type and say, all right, that's wizard. So we'll do all that kind of funky inputting of human, wizard, 1. So that I know when I'm choosing my character that if I go with this option, I have the advantage. And in this case, if I go knight, I have the disadvantage. So I'm going to choose the wizard. And now that I've pressed while it was state 1, it will run. It'll set the player type to. It'll set the player type number to whatever option 1 is. So that will now be saved to the player type. It'll set the numbers to be the same, and it'll say, all right, run state 1. Run the next code. And that will be this. So it'll immediately set to state 2. It'll update the modifiers, which are these, which is a whole other function. Let me find real quick. Okay. Which is a code down here that will just make sure that your display is current, right? Because my game can change the modifiers all at once, but it needs to make sure to tell these labels to also update accordingly. So look at your type modifier. Check that your type modifier that you are a wizard, so I can inherit +1/+1. Then I'll say this is one of the bigger dictionary dives. And look at your weapon dictionary according to your player type and your weapon type and all this nonsense. And have it power. And look at its power, and then add its type modifier. And also add any of the ring modifiers. And I'll do the same thing for accuracy. So I'll set all these, and then we can update the label, with your power is equal to your updated power modifier plus your accuracy with your updated accuracy modifier. And like I said, all this is a super long way of digging all the different dictionaries, all the different references to go in and deep dive to find all this information. Because all this will pop out with what your weapon modifier is, right? Under power, and then update that, which will update to here. So now we know we have power of 1, accuracy of 1 because we're a human wizard, and human wizards just inherently have advantage because that's how I designed my game. So next we'll pick a weapon. Now we have all 3 different options, so we will choose the staff. So we like having more power. Accuracy is fine, but we want to do a power build this time. And so I said, so in choosing that, this pulled up all the different same things, look at the different weapons, pull up all the different weapons, but this is one of my longest strings because I need to have in one line need to have my power and go in that whole similar thing we just did down there. Look at my weapons dictionary under my player type, and then under my weapon type, which I had to dig into the other dictionary, I had to pull out a whole separate save of Godot to kind of walk myself through this. Here, let me pull that up real quick. Alright, so I ended up making a whole separate file for dictionaries. So I copied over all the relevant dictionaries I already have figured out or whatever. Figured out the backwards dictionary. Set all my information, and I went okay, through all the different steps, and this was even okay, do I need to do, this was trying to figure out, okay, do I need to do this whole if-else, trying to figure out, okay, before I figured out the backwards dictionary, right here, to figure out, okay, how do I check what my freaking weapon is, or do I need to have if I'm an archer, then look at my archer weapons, or if I'm a knight, look at my knight weapons, but then I figured out, like I said, do a backwards dictionary, because I have the number reference, so I have a dictionary where I can look it up, and then apply it back into this. I said all the different degrees of tiers of my race. That is my player race. If I need my type, I need to look at my player type number, look at my type, string, and my modifier needs to know my, look at the player dictionary is like whatever. So I had to sit there and break all this apart to make sure exactly how to look at my power for my weapon with my player modifier, all that nonsense. So, like I said, all that led to this really long string. And I said, so what is this? This is this button. It needs to know that, okay, I'm a dwarf knight in this situation. So it needs to know my dwarf knight. I rolled all the same number. That's funny. So it needs to know as a dwarf knight, if I roll all ones, right? They're all ones, so they're all scimitars. It needs to be able to pull out the information of, okay, as a scimitar for the knight, what's its power and what's its accuracy? So it needs to figure out what my weapon type is. So look at my player type according with option 3, because I said this is the option 3, 4, and 5. So option 3, if it rolled a 1 for the scimitar, it needs to pull out what its name is, right? So this is a scimitar. So it's looking at, hey, it's option 3. If I'm a knight, what's my weapon type? Weapon type, I'm a knight. Option, 1. Look at option 3 that rolled a 1. That's a scimitar. That does a space P, and then it does the whole deep dive of, okay, I need to look at the weapon dictionary. I need to look at my type, which is knight. I need to look at the next step from this bracket to this bracket. I need to know my weapon type, which I said I can pull up here to say, okay, it was option 3 under player type. Option 3 is a knight. Weapon type is a scimitar. So look at the knight's option 3, which is a scimitar, and look at its power. And its power is 0. So scimitar, space P with a number, space A. And do that very same thing for accuracy, and I was able to get all this in one really long, complicated string, but as I keep saying, it functions. And then this was where I had the problem of my texture resource loader dot load. That in this, there is no way to change the middle of this and say, hey, make this the player type, right? If I change stuff in here, it's going to look for exactly this file. There's not a way of saying, hey, pause this quote, enter text, continue the quote. It's looking for this exact file name. But that's, as I said, where sprite sheets come in, as I discovered later, as you can have a sprite sheet and then set this to sprite sheet frame 1, 2, or 3, according to if you're knight, archer, or wizard. But at the time of making this, I didn't know that, so I went and did the hard way of checking, hey, if I'm an archer, if I'm a knight, if I'm a wizard, go specifically load the sprite archer, knight, or wizard. In this case, knight. And then after all that, when we choose our scimitar, set things to state 3, which will set in your weapon, permanent, make it permanent. It's a scimitar right there. We'll update your modifiers. I said that text down here to update to make sure my scimitar is a 0, 0, so these didn't change, and change if I needed to. It'll run the get enemy, and we'll set these labels to fight, chance, or run. So now, like I said, we're in the main game. My buttons, these buttons still don't do anything at the moment because I don't have anything, because it checks the inventory, and if it's 0, it doesn't do anything. But my 3 buttons are set to, now that we're at state level 3, they will run their different stuff. And I said my buttons are also, now that we're state 3, it'll check if I have a potion. If potion is greater than 0, run this code. If it's not, it'll totally ignore it. Nothing happens. So real quick, I want to get the chance out of here because that's kind of the odd one out because it can do a whole bunch of random stuff. As I said, it can do stun, gain life, change race, change weapon, a free flee, or a one-hit kill. So it kind of does a whole bunch of random mechanics. Right? So it'll roll a, in this case, a d6, a 0 through 5. If a 0 does something, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I said it'll change the name of the label to stun. This is my my workaround for animation or timing, right? Is the await command. So this will wait for 1 second. So it'll do one hit kill, and so it'll change the name. Gotta wait. It'll do whatever happens. But with that, the clunky workaround I have to make it sure you can't press and do other stuff, I had to have a disable and enable, and that's down here where I was able to just full on disable all the buttons and enable all the buttons so that when stuff is happening, you can't interact with anything. And like I said, I'm sure this was one I haven't solved, but I'm sure I'm doing a way clunky way of doing it. But disable all the buttons, wait for a second, then enable all the buttons, then change this stuff to chance, let the enemy's turn happen, and then after the enemy's turn, we'll reset back to the start to neutral state, which is start of state 3. And then similarly, if you roll a 1, in this case technically 2, you'll gain some health. It'll update your update your health with what your new health is. It'll tell you what happened, that you gained 3 health. It'll let that text change sit there for a second, and then it returns things to normal. Changing your race, same thing. It'll make sure to update your modifiers with your new races. I couldn't change I can only change race and weapon, but not class or type, because this would be a lot more pain in the butt. I'd have to change what weapon you have, and that's not like a lot of work. So, like I said, this and this are direct changes. You can gain advantage or disadvantage depending on your class, so changing one will be fine. So if you start the game off with the class or race that has the inherent disadvantage, you can roll this hoping you can get a change of race and a change of weapon until you can get your +0, +2 power or accuracy, or +2, +0 power build. A random chance to get away. Random chance of one hit kill. Set enemy's health to 0. Say what happens. It will run the get enemy drop or get enemy and enemy drop command, which we'll get more into with the fighting. So this one has a good chance of me just figuring out how to apply a bunch of different random chunks. So now we have the fight function. Starts off with figuring out a die roll. And if you notice, I have a cute little animation when you fight. Right? And also you can notice that I disable things also while you're fighting, same as the chance, so you can't try to get more than one thing running at a time. So this also is the you roll around a number for what it is. You disable all your controls. And then this is where, like I said, the sprite sheet would have been much easier. For this one, I had to specifically go in and tell, hey, load the dice face 1, 4, 3, 4, 2, 6, somewhat random, and then make it so by default it's invisible. So make it visible. Set it to 1, make it visible. Wait a second, change the thing. Wait a second, wait 0.1 second, change the thing. 0.1 second, change the thing. 0.1 second, change the thing. And then, depending on what your accuracy roll is, display that. And then wait for half a second, do the calculation, get your accuracy plus your accuracy modifier, which is right here. And then, we have, make it so you can see the, hide the player data, the die roll. Then if the accuracy is bigger than the enemy, as I said, a accuracy requirement of 1, which I have an accuracy of 1, I roll 1, so I have always set a 2, then it will roll this. Once again, because I also discovered you can't do a big enable and disable at the end. As soon as you kind of branch out, it can parallel run two things. So like if it goes into this if command and I have a delay in here or something, it like finishes somewhere. It does something weird. So every time I had to go and I had to redisable every time I went into branching code. Like I said, if they're telling me this the proper way of doing this, but this functions. They'll do all this stuff. Load up the hits picture, show it for half a second, turn off the picture. Roll my random power dice. Show my random, figure out what I rolled. Show the little animation 1, 4, 3, 4, 2, 6, and then whatever I rolled actually set that proper image. Wait for half a second. Add my power to my power model. Add my power modifier to what I just rolled. Turn the dice image off. My enemy's health is minus my power. And then this is the longest chunk of, depending on what that damage is, display that number. Right? Did I do 2 damage, 1 damage? If you build your stat fully up with the having 2 plus 3 plus 3 rings, and then 2 power, that's 8. And if you roll a 6, that's 14. And just in case I did my math wrong, I made a 15. Or whatever, or whatever for other reason, I just made it go up to 15. And all these are set separate. If your power is 1, display image 1. If your power is 7, display image 7. This can be fixed so much better with sprite sheets. And I have started messing with that in Dice Launcher 2, but for now, I did it the way that technically functions. And then we wait a second, then we check if the enemy's dead. If the enemy's health is less than 0, we set it to 0. We update the label with his HP that says whatever it is. If it was -2 because we hit it so hard, it's now 0. If it still has 3 HP, it sits at 3 HP. Waits a second, re-enables all my buttons. If I didn't, the game would be bricked. Turn off the damage hit image. Then if the enemy's health is 0, get a new enemy. If else, run the enemy's turn. And then all this is if we hit, like I said, if the accuracy is bigger, do all this stuff. But if not, disable everything, show that the miss image. So if we can get that. That was roll 1, we miss. Right? And it killed us in that instant. Right? So if we don't hit, show the miss. Show for half a second, turn the dice off. Re-enable all my buttons, then run the enemy's turn function. We can go down here. Very same thing, basically the same thing. Roll around the number, show what the damage does, subtract the health. If the health is dead, or if our health is less than 0, set it to 0. Do all the timing stuff, then check. Okay, if the player's health is 0 at this point, because up here we set it to 0. If it was lower, 0 out all our items. Then update the images to reflect that and get new enemy. So in this game, if you have any rings equipped, I don't de-equip the rings if you die. If you have bombs or potions in your backpack, you lose all those kind of thing. And then it runs the get enemy command. So let's look at that one next. So the get enemy command is every time we start a new enemy, we want to make sure the player's health is reset to 10. You always start with full health, then update the label saying it's 10, roll a random enemy 0 through 5, and then set the enemy's accuracy equal to the enemy type. Remember, because it's only rolling a 0 through 5, not 1 through 6, I could change it to 1 through 6, but it's trying to stay consistent. Add +1, so that is equal to its encounter, is its accuracy. Then you set the enemy, and that is simply a pull the enemy's image, so I don't have to copy and paste this everywhere. I said if we rolled a 0, that's the bat, and the bat says count as 1, so sets the enemy accuracy to 1. Updates the text, sets the enemy to 10 life, sets the enemy's image, and sets its name and accuracy and all this information, right? Then if we do fight it and win, we do the get drop, right? Roll on the random 1 through 5, then if drop is 0, add a potion, and then this I have a max of 10 items just because I don't want to get crazy. So if you have more than 10 potions, set it to 10 potions, and then run the update potion, which very much like the update enemies command is all of this. If you have 0 potions, set to 0. If you have 1 potion, set to 1. And this one, I did not want to do like the damage all the way up to 15, so I set it at 3. And if you have more than 3, it'll store it up till 10, but it'll just say lots. It'll just say you have lots of potions, lots of rings, lots of bombs, or whatever. The difference we'll get into is with the rings, it'll also check if you have any equipped. So with that, we can look at our items, what they do, right? So if we press the potion, and if it's state 3, and if we at least have a potion, we'll use a potion. Potion is equal to -1, so it takes 1 away, adds 5 health, updates the health, and lets the enemies go, and updates the potion, which updates the number image on top of it. Very similar to poison. The only difference is it will in here check if we've killed the enemy. If so, we'll get the drop, and roll a new enemy. If not, the enemy goes normally. The smoke bomb is a same thing as a runaway, or at least very similar to runaway. Runaway is a 50-50 coin of if you roll a 1, you get away, displays that for a second and gets away. There's a chance to fail. The smoke bomb is a free runaway that will just reset, get a new enemy, and update that stat. So now with the rings, I had to figure out how to track what is equipped and not. And this is where I had to figure out the fun code of if it's pushed with the mouse left button or the right button, right click, left click, right click. So if you click on it, you equip it. If you right click, you unequip a ring. So if it's clicked with a right click, it'll check, are we in state 3? Then check if the player has more than 1 ring of accuracy, and if you have equipped less than 2 rings. Because in this, I have it set where you can only equip up to 2 rings. Then if all that is true, it will do one last thing. If ring of accuracy, it'll then check if the ring of accuracy equipped is less than 2. Might be a little redundant, but that's fine. And then it'll say, hey, your ring of accuracy in your bag will be take 1 away, add 1 to your total equipped, add 1 to make sure you have ring of accuracy specifically equipped. Then it'll add its modifiers, which will be plus or -1 to your power, +2 to your accuracy. Then update those modifiers and update the image. Then they'll check if it was a right click, and they'll say if you're in state 3, and they'll see, okay, do you have a ring of accuracy equipped? Right, do you have more than 1 of these rings equipped? If so, we'll take 1 out with the ring of accuracy. You'll take 1 out. We'll take 1 out of equipment, add 1 to your bag, and reset your power to the +1, -2. Right? As far as I know, I'm hoping there's no bugs in here that would leave it to where you can trick it and press this more often or whatever. But I haven't found any, so we're doing good. And the very same thing for the gold ring, except it's a +3 power, +3 accuracy. Yeah, or the power rings, which is a +2 power, -1 accuracy. And then, then that will simply also down here when you equip, it'll check, say, hey, if you have a ring of accuracy equipped is greater than or equal to 1, set this equipped to 1 true, else set it to false. If you have 2 equipped, set the second one to also to true, and then if not, set it to false. And that's simply my 2 E's where you have 1 equipped or 2 equipped kind of thing. And with all of that, that now leaves a technically functional game. That is, like I said, the main win condition of the game that isn't coded, but is what the goal is to fight the dragon. So you come in here, you fight things, you get drops, you get items, you get rings to slowly upgrade, and it'll hit more powerful. Now you get plus three power with no accuracy. You want to get 1 or 2 gold rings where you can become unstoppable with your +6/+6 and fight the dragon and win. So now that I have Dice Venture 1 technically functioning, MVP game, minimum viable product, my next steps are to work on Dice Venture 2, which has been the whole time a better implemented version where it now adds locations, and in those locations your archers have advantage, your knights have disadvantage. It's also a 2-player / you control 2 people and you fight 2 people at once, so added more variety, adds different scaled life amounts, adds abilities, poison, hexproof, adds different rings, and a whole bunch of new stuff like that to add more variety. I've been working with Ace Sprite to try to work on different more style of the game with the different sprites and upgrades and different look of it all. Been working with Family Studio to try to get some more retro-esque music. I've been working with, like I said, actual sprite sheets, so I can actually much easier just change the, look at the sprite sheets according to all the random things. And like I said, my art skills are terrible. I'll get back to these, don't worry about that, but this is just all the different general layout. You'll have your 2 things, fighting your enemies, and like I said, there's no logic here, but that's my next step, is to keep working on adding better logic. And yeah, if you want to follow me for this journey, please feel free to follow along and let me know your thoughts, feedback, and hope this just helps to prove that you can, without having any idea what you're doing, you can start doing stuff, you can start learning, you can start dabbling. Thank you for watching.